Welcome to Cheat Sheet Tale, where secrets slip, lies unravel, and the truth always has a twist. Real stories, raw confessions, and shocking betrayals. Drop a comment if you've ever caught a red flag too late. Now let's get into today's tale. At my sister's promotion party, they made me toast with a paper cup while everyone else had crystal flutes. She's used to the cheap stuff, my brother-in-law snorted. Well, at least it matches her life choices. Even the caterers looked sorry for me. Just smile and don't start anything, I whispered to myself, catching my reflection in the window of my car. It had been 6 years since I'd seen most of my family, and I could already feel that tight, familiar grip in my chest. I was back, in Charleston, my hometown, a place I had driven away from with my life stuffed into my car, tears in my eyes, and not one person waving me goodbye. And now, here I was again, for a party I wasn't even sure I wanted to attend. My sister Claire had just made partner at her law firm, and my parents had rented out some stunning waterfront estate in Mount Pleasant to celebrate it, like it was a royal coronation. It was Claire's night, and she deserved the recognition, sure. But I also knew what being around my family meant for me. Judgment in the form of small talk, looks exchanged when I answered questions honestly, and barbed compliments that pretended to be jokes. When I stepped out of the car, the first thing that hit me was the scent of sea air, mingled with money, perfume, bourbon, and leather. Everything about the place said someone made it. I walked toward the back, where the party had already started. Men were wearing pastel sport coats and loafers without socks. The women had manicured nails and dresses that looked hand-picked by personal shoppers. The waitstaff moved like shadows, silent, efficient, watching. It was beautiful in that curated, sterile way. I saw my sister laughing near the buffet table, surrounded by people who all seemed too perfect to be real. She caught sight of me and gave a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. It had been years, but the distance between us felt physical. She wore an off-the-shoulder navy dress and diamond earrings that probably came with an insurance policy. "Iris," she said with a nod. Just that. No hug, no glad you came. She moved aside to let me into the circle. I wasn't sure if I was meant to stay or pass through. Her husband, Grant, was already 2 drinks in. That much was clear. His face had that flushed, smug expression that only rich men who never had to apologize wear, like a badge. "Well, look what the dog dragged in," he said, raising his glass. "Nice of you to grace us with your presence, Iris." I gave a tight smile. "Hi, Grant." He didn't offer a hug or a handshake, just looked me up and down, then turned back to the group. Conversations picked back up like I'd never been there at all. I tried to blend in, or disappear, whichever came first. I stood awkwardly near the patio wall, looking out at the water, nursing a club soda. Waiters moved through the crowd, offering champagne and crystal flutes. When one came my way, I smiled and reached out. Instead of handing me a flute, he paused, then produced a small paper cup from behind his tray, and whispered, "I was told. This is for you." I blinked. Was it a mistake? Before I could ask, Grant's voice rang out from the crowd. He was holding up his glass, sloshing champagne as he called for attention. "To Claire," he said, grinning. "My brilliant, gorgeous wife. She's officially a partner now, so she makes more than me, which is terrifying, but she deserves it. She's smart, disciplined, and way out of my league." People laughed and clinked glasses. Then he turned toward me. He must have spotted the paper cup in my hand. "And to Iris, too," he added with that fake laugh he used when he wanted to stir the pot. "She's used to the cheap stuff. Well, at least it matches her life choices." A few people chuckled awkwardly. Claire didn't say a word. Her lips curved into a small smile, like she wasn't sure if she should stop him or not. I felt my ears burning. I looked around. No one made eye contact. Even the waiters avoided my gaze. I stood there holding that paper cup like it was a neon sign flashing outsider, and all I could think was, I came all this way for this? I left the crowd as quietly as I could, stepping out toward the dock. The laughter continued behind me, rising in waves. The marsh stretched out in front of me, golden, quiet, under the setting sun. It was one of the few things in Charleston that still felt like home. I sat on the edge of the dock, legs dangling over the side. I hadn't cried, not yet, but it was building, that bitter pressure in my chest. Behind me, the party kept going, like nothing had happened. Like I hadn't just been publicly humiliated for what? Choosing a different kind of life? I run a pottery studio in Asheville. I teach art classes. I sell my work at markets and online. I live in a cozy, sun-drenched apartment with my rescue dog, Maple. I'm not married. I don't have kids. And yeah, I make just enough to live on, but I'm not miserable. I'm not chasing status or performance bonuses. I've never once told someone they match their cheap life choices in front of 50 strangers. I was still sitting there when I heard footsteps behind me. I turned, half expecting Grant with another jab. It was Claire. She didn't say anything at first, just sat down next to me. Her heels clicked softly against the dock before she slipped them off. She didn't apologize. Not directly. You know he drinks too much, she said. I said nothing. I didn't ask him to say that. I noticed you didn't stop him either. A pause. You've always been sensitive. I turned to her. Do you think that's what this is about? Me being sensitive? Another silence. I just wanted tonight to go well, she said. It did, I answered. For you. She looked down at the water. You left so suddenly back then. You didn't even say goodbye. I didn't think anyone would notice. I noticed. The truth was, she probably had, but not enough to call or write or ask why. I wanted to scream, but the weight of yours makes you too tired to raise your voice. Instead, I said, do you know how humiliating it was to be treated like a punchline? It wasn't meant that way. Intent doesn't cancel out impact. That made her look up. She looked at me for a long time, not with pity, but something else, maybe guilt, maybe clarity. I'm sorry, she said, finally, but it didn't fix anything. Not really. I'm not angry that you're successful, Claire. I'm proud of you. But I'm not going to keep showing up to places where I'm made to feel small. I understand, she said quietly. I stood. My legs felt heavy, but my spine was straight. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like the black sheep. I felt like someone who had finally stopped pretending. I didn't go back to the party. I walked straight to my car, ignoring the hum of music and the pop of laughter that drifted across the marsh like static. The valet looked a little confused, probably because I'd only been there a short while, but I handed over the ticket without a word. As I drove across the Ravenel Bridge, I kept replaying Grant's voice in my head. His smug tone, the paper cup, the way people laughed, or worse, how no one said a thing. I didn't cry. Not out of pride, but because I was numb. In that slow, heavy weight, trauma wraps around you after years of repetition. It wasn't just the toast. It was every moment like it before that. That night was just the clearest example. Back at my Airbnb, I kicked off my sandals, peeled off my dress, and collapsed into bed with Maple curled beside me. My dog looked at me like I was the most important person in the world. That alone was more comfort than anything I'd felt all evening. I didn't hear from anyone that night. Not Claire, not my parents, not even a courtesy text from anyone saying, sorry about that. Nothing, which in some ways hurt more than the paper cup. The next morning, I got up early and went to Folly Beach. I brought my sketch pad, a travel mug of coffee, and a blanket. I sat in the sand for hours, letting the wind tangle my hair. I drew without thinking. Shapes, lines, soft spirals of clay in my mind. When my phone buzzed around noon, I didn't recognize the number. It was a text. "Hey, I should have said something sooner. Last night wasn't okay. I'm really sorry. Can we talk before you leave town, Claire?" I stared at it for a long time. What did I want to say? What did I owe her? What did I owe myself? Eventually, I typed, "I'm free this evening. Not at your house. Neutral ground." She replied quickly. "There's a coffee shop on Meeting Street. Preserve. 6 p.m. I got there 10 minutes early and picked a table near the back. Preserve was one of those renovated Charleston places, exposed brick, Edison bulbs, reclaimed wood tables. Beautiful and over-designed, like most things here. Claire arrived on time. She wasn't wearing heels this time, just flats and a navy sweater. Still immaculate, but less armor. She sat across from me, and for a moment, neither of us said anything. Finally, she opened with, "I've been thinking about what you said." I nodded. She looked tired in a way I hadn't noticed the night before. Her lipstick was gone, and her eyes weren't hiding behind lashes and shimmer. Just for once, I told Grant. "What he said was unacceptable," she said quietly. He laughed it off. "Called you sensitive. We had a fight this morning." "What kind of fight?" "The kind where I told him if he ever embarrassed me like that again, we'd be having a different conversation. The kind where I started to wonder how many times I've let him get away with things because I didn't want to cause a scene." That surprised me. I didn't say anything right away. I wanted her to keep going. "I don't know how I became the kind of person who lets things slide," she continued. "I used to think I was strong." "You are," I said before I could stop myself. She looked at me, eyes sharp and wet. "Then why didn't I say anything last night? Why didn't I stop him?" I shrugged. "Because it's easier to protect the performance than to protect people." Her face crumpled slightly, but she nodded. "I'm sorry, Iris. Not just for last night, for all of it. For how we grew up, how Mom and Dad always..." She broke off. "They made me the golden girl, but it didn't feel like a prize. It felt like a job." I blinked. That was the first time she'd ever said something like that. We'd never talked openly about how different our experiences were growing up. She got praise and expectations. I got ignored and blamed. But it was the first time I realized maybe neither of us got what we needed. "Do you remember that summer I ran away for a night?" I asked. She nodded. "You were 14. You stayed in the woods. I came back because I thought you'd come looking for me." Claire looked away, ashamed. "I wanted to, but Dad said it was just a stunt for attention. He said, 'If we let you come back on your own, you'd learn your lesson.'" I shook my head. That was the lesson. The server came by with coffee. Claire ordered tea. We sat in silence for a while, just letting the weight of our shared history settle between us. "I don't expect us to fix everything over one cup of coffee," she said eventually. "Neither do I, but I want to try." I nodded. "Then, don't just apologize for Grant. Change what you tolerate." She looked at me like she hadn't thought of that before. We sat there for another hour, talking a little, listening more about small things. Life in Asheville, her long hours, our mother's obsession with appearances, our father's silence that always carried judgment like a second language. And somewhere in that conversation, I realized something I hadn't expected. I didn't hate her. I hated how much both of us had been shaped by people who didn't love in healthy ways. I hated that it had taken us almost 4 decades to be honest with each other. But hate wasn't the end of this story, and neither was that party. When I got back to the Airbnb, I felt unsteady. Not in a bad way, but like something had shifted. like a tectonic plate had nudged just enough to leave cracks where there used to be solid ground. Not enough to collapse the landscape, but enough to make you look at the terrain a little differently. Maple greeted me at the door like she hadn't seen me in days. Even though I'd only been gone 2 hours, I knelt down and buried my face in her fur. She didn't care about old wounds or fragile apologies, just that I was home. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on the porch. The rental overlooked a quiet marsh, and in the stillness of South Carolina humidity, everything felt suspended. Even the cicadas seemed less aggressive. I thought about Claire's face when she admitted she hadn't stood up for me, about the way her voice cracked when she called herself strong and wasn't sure if she still believed it. I didn't text her again that night. I needed to hold space for everything I was feeling, not rush to reassure her or forgive her too quickly. The next morning, I checked out early. I stopped by a bakery near King Street, grabbed a coffee and a croissant, and hit the road back to Asheville. I didn't tell anyone I was leaving. No last breakfast with my parents. No awkward goodbyes with Claire. I'd done what I came to do. Show up, see the truth for myself, and walk away knowing I wasn't crazy for how I felt all those years. Back in my apartment, I went straight to the studio in my spare room. Clay always helps when my mind is too loud. I threw a slab onto the wheel and just let my hands move. I didn't have a plan. I never do when it's something personal. Over the next few days, I found myself making things that didn't belong in my Etsy shop. A series of wide-open mugs with gold-laced cracks down the sides, heavy bowls with uneven rims that somehow looked better imperfect. Every piece seemed to reflect something about that weekend. Tension, damage, repair. It was unintentional, but unmistakable. Claire texted me twice that week. The first time, she sent a photo of us as kids. We were sitting on the back porch of our childhood home. Me with scraped knees and a toothy grin. Her in a lopsided ponytail, pretending to read a book that was upside down. The caption said, "We weren't always strangers." The second message came a few days later. I talked to Grant. Really talked. He didn't like what I had to say. He says, "I've changed. I think I finally have." That one stayed with me. I didn't reply right away. I needed to believe that she wasn't just trying to patch things up for appearances, that she wasn't performing remorse the way she used to perform perfection. A week later, a package arrived at my door. It was from Claire. Inside was a letter, handwritten. "Iris, I owe you more than one apology, and I know letters won't fix that. But writing it out is helping me understand what I've allowed and what I've ignored for far too long. I told Grant I want space, not a divorce yet, but time. I'm not sure he's capable of changing, but I know I am. I've started seeing a therapist. It's hard, but it's also honest, for the first time in a while. I also spoke to Mom and Dad. I told them what happened at the party, that they owed you an apology too. They didn't take it well. Dad said you were always too dramatic. Mom said you misunderstood the joke. I told them they were wrong. I don't know where this leaves us, but I hope this is the start of something different, something better. I miss you. Love, Claire." I read the letter 3 times before setting it down. She was trying. It didn't erase what had happened, but it made room for something else. I took one of the mugs I'd made, my favorite one, the one with the biggest, crack running down the side, repaired with gold, and wrapped it up in craft paper and bubble wrap. I added a note. "It's imperfect but honest, like us." Then I boxed it and mailed it to her. A few days passed before I heard from her again. She sent a photo of the mug sitting on her office desk next to a framed photo of her and me from our early teens. Her message read, "Every time I look at it, I remember we can mend things, even if they don't go back to how they were." I didn't cry. but I felt something soften in me that I hadn't realized was still clenched. That Friday, I got a call from our mom. I let it go to voicemail. Later, I listened to it. Her voice was polite, measured. "Hi, Iris. Your sister mentioned you two had a productive conversation. I hope you're well. We'd love to have you over sometime. Maybe for Thanksgiving. Give us a call when you're free." I didn't return the call. Not yet. Because politeness isn't the same as accountability, and I wasn't going to settle for surface-level peace anymore. I didn't respond to my mother's voicemail, not because I was angry, although I had every right to be, but because I was done rewarding half-efforts with my energy. That message wasn't an apology. It was a PR move, something to smooth the surface just enough to avoid real change. And I had changed. By the time November rolled around, I was firmly back in my rhythm. Pottery classes, local art markets, walks with Maple, quiet evenings filled with candles and jazz records. I was no longer checking my phone for messages from home, but Claire kept texting, not constantly, just enough to let me know she was still trying. She'd send photos of art she saw in galleries that reminded her of my work, updates on therapy, even the occasional self-deprecating joke that didn't carry cruelty, only honesty. The distance between us was shrinking, but I was still watching, still cautious. Then, in mid-November, something unexpected happened. I was invited to submit a series of pieces to a regional art competition and showcase held in Charleston, Southern Voices in Modern Clay. The irony of the location wasn't lost on me. My first instinct was to decline. I didn't want to go back there. Not again. But after sitting with it, I realized something important. This time, it wouldn't be about them. It would be about me. So, I submitted 3 pieces. The gold-cracked mug I'd replicated from the one I sent Claire. A wide, shallow bowl shaped like the marsh with subtle carvings of roots and reeds under the glaze, and a tall, imperfect vase with fingerprints intentionally left visible in the surface, like a memory made solid. They were personal, quiet, and unapologetically mine. A few weeks later, I got the email. Accepted. Featured artist. Opening night in December. I didn't tell anyone, not even Claire. Not at first. Instead, I posted about it on my studio's Instagram, which I knew Claire followed. She liked the post less than an hour later. The next morning, I got a text. "You're coming back to Charleston for the show? Please say yes." I told her I was, that I had a piece in the gallery and would be attending the opening. She replied, "I'll be there." I'll be there. The night of the show, I wore something I'd made with my own hands. A hand-dyed wrap dress in deep green, simple jewelry, and soft leather shoes. I felt comfortable, confident, whole. The gallery was beautiful, clean and bright with high ceilings and rows of soft spotlights. My work had been placed near the center, next to a minimalist piece from a sculptor out of Savannah. There was a placard with my name, my studio, and a short artist statement I'd written the week before. These pieces were born from brokenness. They carry the memory of being shattered, and the choice to be mended. They are not perfect. They are honest. I stood nearby, listening to people murmur about the work, watching them lean in to see the gold in the cracks, or trace the edge of the marsh with their eyes. No one knew me here. No one was watching to compare me to a sister, or asking why I'd chosen art over family or finance. I was just Iris, the artist. Claire arrived about 40 minutes in. She came alone. No Grant. She walked straight up to me, clutching a simple clutch and a bouquet of marigolds. The symbolism didn't go unnoticed. "They said these mean pain and resilience," she said quietly. "They do," I replied. She looked at the vase, then the mug. "Is that the one you made after the party?" I nodded. She smiled. Not the polished lawyer smile, but something smaller. Real. "I'm proud of you," she said. "Thanks." Then she leaned in and added, "And I told Mom and Dad not to come. That stopped me." "You what?" She exhaled. "They saw your post, asked if I was going to the opening. I said yes, and that if they came just to pretend to support you after all these years of neglecting you, I'd walk right out and tell every person there the truth, that they didn't deserve to be in your corner now." I blinked. "You really said that?" Every word. A pause. Then she added, "They were furious. Called me dramatic. Said you were just doing this for attention." I laughed. Not bitterly, just surprised. Some things never change. "No," she agreed. "But I'm changing." She handed me the bouquet. "I've been thinking a lot about that night. How he humiliated you. How I said nothing. I let my silence excuse cruelty for years. Not just that night. It wasn't just you," I said. "But it was enough of me." She replied, "And I'm sorry." I looked at her then, and I saw it. Not the sister I'd grown up competing with. Not the woman with the husband and the diamonds and the curated life. But someone standing in the wreckage of all the stories she'd been told, holding a match and deciding not to rebuild what was broken, but to start fresh. We stood together in front of the display. She told me she'd left Grant 2 weeks ago, that the distance she'd asked for had shown her more truth than she expected, that therapy had opened doors she didn't know she'd kept locked, and that she had started telling people no, even when it cost her approval. "I think you were always freer than me," she said, "even when you had less." "I never wanted to be free alone," I said. She nodded. "I think I'm ready to be your sister now. Not the image, just your sister." I believed her. That night, 2 pieces sold, the marsh bowl and the tall vase. The gallery owner pulled me aside before I left and said, "Someone came in earlier today. Said they wanted to purchase anonymously. Bought the pieces outright. Told me to tell you, no more paper cups." I knew who it was. It wasn't Grant. And it certainly wasn't my parents. That was my revenge. Not the cruel kind. Not dramatic. Not vindictive. Just the kind where I stood in a room of strangers, my name next to something real I created, and watched people admire it without needing to know what I'd survived to make it. The kind where I stopped showing up for people who only liked the version of me that stayed silent. The kind where my sister finally chose me over performance, and I chose myself over approval. Not with rage, but with art, with truth, and with a mug that would never, ever be made of paper again.